Attorney General Eric Holder defends plans to prosecute some terrorism suspects in traditional criminal courts. He testifies before the House Appropriations Subcommittee. This is about 3 hours.
And distinguished members of the subcommittee. Today it's my privilege to discuss the President's Department of Justice budget for fiscal year 2011 and to provide an update on the Justice Department's progress, top priorities, and future plans. But first, let me thank you for your ongoing support of the Department's work and your recognition of its essential role in protecting our nation's people as well as our highest principles. When I met with this subcommittee last April, I pledged that under my leadership, the Justice Department would vigorously pursue a specific and critical set of objectives: combating terrorism, fighting crime, enforcing our laws in a neutral and in a nonpartisan way, and reinvigorating the Department's commitment to integrity, transparency, and results. I believe we're on the right path to achieving these goals. Although unprecedented challenges and new demands have emerged, our key priorities remain clear. And ensuring the safety of the American people continues to be our paramount responsibility. Over the last year, we have enhanced our national security programs and capabilities. We've also strengthened efforts to protect our environment, as well as our most vulnerable communities. We've reinvigorated our mission to safeguard civil rights in our workplaces, our housing markets, our voting booths, as well as our border areas. And as part of our focus on securing our economy and combating mortgage and financial fraud, the Department is now spearheading the Financial Fraud Enforcement Task Force that President Obama launched last year. The President's budget request of $29 billion demonstrates a strong commitment to the Justice Department's key priorities. Now, let me assure you that in distributing and using these funds, we will think carefully and we will think strategically, and we will act to ensure accountability as well as transparency. As you've seen, the President's budget requests $300 million in program increases to help strengthen national security and to counter the threat of terrorism. These resources will enable us to expand on the progress that we've made in the last year. Due to the vigilance of our law enforcement and intelligence agencies, we've succeeded in identifying and averting nascent plots, some known to the public, many not, including one of the most serious threats since September the 11th of 2001. A few weeks ago, Naji Boulazazi, the mastermind behind a plot to bomb New York City's subway system, pled guilty to 3 criminal charges. 4 others have also been charged as a result of our investigation. This attempted attack on our homeland, on our most populated city, was real. It was in motion, and it would have been deadly. But because of careful analysis by our intelligence agents and prompt actions by law enforcement, we were able to thwart a potential disaster, as we have repeatedly done over the last year. Just last month, again in New York City, Afia Siddiqui, a United States-trained Pakistani physicist, was convicted of attempted murder and armed assault. She had shown a clear intent to kill Americans, and at the time of her arrest possessed documents that referred to a, quote, mass casualty attack, unquote, and listed specific locations, including the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, and the Brooklyn Bridge. And last week in Philadelphia, an American citizen was charged with conspiring to provide material support to terrorists and to commit murder overseas. Now, these recent cases remind us that terrorist methods are evolving, as are the types of individuals involved in terrorist activities. We face a serious, capable, and determined enemy in the war that we are fighting. This underscores why the Justice Department must have the capacity to respond effectively and to respond quickly. And our actions over the past year, I believe, provide evidence that we are making significant advancements in combating these threats. Now, despite this recent progress, however, we cannot become complacent, and we must not, and we will not, lose focus in our efforts to bring terrorists to justice. Now, I realize that there are different views on how best to approach this work. There is a very legitimate and robust conversation that we should have about it. But we cannot allow the politics of fear to drive us apart. Facts, not fear, must be the basis of all our discussions. Now more than ever, the American people deserve this. Again, we are at war, and we must use every instrument in our power, including the full scope of our military, law enforcement, intelligence, and diplomatic capabilities to win this war. But in the pursuit of victory, we must not turn our backs on what has made our nation an example to all the world. Today, our challenge is not only to remain safe, but also to be true to our heritage, true to our principles, and true to our best selves. This is the Justice Department's most urgent and most essential work. Once again, I thank you for supporting us. I look forward to continue to work with this subcommittee and also with Congress, and I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. I'd like to inform the subcommittee that Mr. Wolf and I will take 20 minutes at the beginning of our questioning. The rest of the subcommittee on first round will have 10 minutes, and that should get us into a second round, and we'll see what kind of time we have after that. I think that gives each myself and Mr. Wolf an opportunity to explore questions, and then for the subcommittee, likewise, to have plenty of time to explore follow-up questions. So, Mr. Attorney General, thank you for your statement. The President's executive order on the closure of the detention facilities at Guantanamo Bay required a review of the status of each detainee in order to determine whether that detainee should be transferred, should be prosecuted, or placed in continuing detention. DOJ was tasked with coordinating that review. Mr. Attorney General, which other agencies were involved in making the recommendations and decisions about which suspects to transfer, who to prosecute, and who to detain?
Well, in addition to the Department of Justice, we have the Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, as well as the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
When those agencies actually sat down to make decisions and after the process that they went through to arrive at the discussions to make decisions, were those votes unanimous?
When the principals of those agencies met to make final determinations with regard to the disposition of the 240 detainees, all of the decisions were unanimous.
What were the criteria the task force members used to inform their recommendations?
Well, first and foremost, we focused on the national security in trying to decide if a person could be released and where that person might be transferred. National security was always our primary concern. We looked at a person's history, the person's possibility for future violence, and then also had to take into consideration in trying to repatriate certain people, whether or not they could be transferred to their home countries out of concern that if they went there, they might be abused. So it was a mix of those factors that led to the decisions that we made.
Mr. Attorney General, are these detainees, do they have access to habeas corpus?
Yes, they do.
All of them?
I don't think all have filed habeas petitions at this point, but they certainly have that right under recent.
Have some detainees actually filed habeas corpus petitions?
Some have, and some have won their habeas petitions, and as a result have been released.
In the last administration, this administration, both, or?
I believe that that is true with regard to the last administration as well. I don't have specific figures, but that habeas process has been going on for some time.
How are you handling those cases?
We have a dedicated, really dedicated crew of lawyers headed by the head of our civil division, Tony West. They have tried about 50 cases at this point, 50 habeas cases. We have people come in from around the country, in addition to Washington, D.C., lawyers from Justice Department lawyers and lawyers from other organizations to help put these cases together and then to try them before judges here in the District of Columbia.